Introduction. On September 1st and 2nd, 1859, a massive solar storm, known as the Carrington event, struck Earth, marking the most powerful geomagnetic storm on record. Named after the British astronomer Richard Carrington, who first observed the solar flare associated with the event, the Carrington event unleashed a torrent of charged particles and electromagnetic energy towards our planet. The consequences were immediate and profound. Telegraph systems across Europe and North America experienced widespread failures, some even sparking fires, and vivid auroras illuminated skies as far south as the Caribbean. The Carrington event and China's artificial sun. This event stands as a monumental occurrence in both scientific history and the development of our understanding of solar activity. Despite the relatively simple technological landscape of the mid-19th century, the Carrington event showcased the immense power of solar storms and their ability to disrupt human technology. It served as an early and stark reminder of our planet's vulnerability to space weather, a reminder that remains acutely relevant today, as our world becomes ever more dependent on complex technological systems. The primary purpose of this documentary is to conduct an extensive and multifaceted analysis of the Carrington event, exploring its historical context, technological impacts, and scientific significance, while also considering its implications for modern society and future preparedness. This documentary aims to provide a comprehensive understanding of the event itself and the broader lessons it offers for our current and future relationship with space weather. The scope of this report is broad, encompassing both historical and contemporary perspectives. It delves into the scientific background of solar storms, the immediate and long-term impacts of the Carrington event, and the cultural memory surrounding this historic solar storm. Moreover, the documentary examines the advances in scientific knowledge and technology that have occurred since 1859, as well as the ongoing vulnerabilities in our modern infrastructure to similar solar events. In addition, the documentary will extend its analysis to a contemporary issue of great significance: China's development of an artificial sun through its fusion research programs. This modern technological breakthrough will be explored in the context of its implications for global energy dynamics and, more specifically, its potential impact on the United States. By juxtaposing the natural solar phenomena of the 19th century with the artificial solar advancements of the 21st century, this report seeks to provide a deep and nuanced understanding of humanity's evolving relationship with solar energy. 1. Historical background. This chapter sets the stage by exploring the science of solar storms, early observations of solar activity, and the technological and scientific context leading up to the Carrington event. 2. The Carrington event. A detailed examination of the event itself, including its chronology, global impact, and the immediate scientific responses. 3. Technological impact. Analysis of the specific effects of the Carrington event on 19th century technology, particularly telegraph systems, and the long-term technological lessons learned. 4. The Carrington event and cultural memory. Exploration of the public reaction, media coverage, and the event's influence on literature, art, and cultural myths. 5. Scientific advances post-Carrington. A look at how the Carrington event spurred advancements in solar physics, space weather prediction, and electromagnetic theory. 6. Modern-day relevance. Discussion of the event's relevance to today's technology, with case studies of modern solar storms and an examination of current preparedness strategies. 7. Hypothetical scenarios. An exploration of the potential impact of a Carrington-level event if it were to occur today, including its effects on critical infrastructure and the global response. 8. The Carrington event and climate science. Investigation of the possible interactions between solar activity and climate, including an analysis of the Carrington event's impact on historical climate data. 9. Lessons learned and future direction. Summary of key lessons from the Carrington event, future research directions, and strategies for preparing for future solar storms. 10. The rise of artificial suns. China's technological breakthrough and its implications. An examination of China's development of an artificial sun, its scientific and strategic significance, and its implications for the United States. Through this structure, the report aims to provide a thorough and insightful exploration of the Carrington event, connecting its historical significance with modern technological challenges and future opportunities. By the conclusion, readers will have gained a deep appreciation for the event's lasting impact on science, technology, and society, as well as a forward-looking perspective on humanity's ongoing quest to harness the power of the sun. Chapter 1: Historical Background. The science of solar storms. Solar storms are fascinating and complex phenomena that arise from the dynamic activity of the sun. Understanding solar storms requires a grasp of several key concepts, including sunspots, solar flares, and coronal mass ejection (CMEs). Together, these phenomena play a crucial role in the generation of solar storms and their subsequent impact on Earth. Sunspots and solar cycle. Sunspots are temporary, dark areas on the sun's surface that are cooler than the surrounding regions. They are caused by intense magnetic activity within the sun, which inhibits convection and results in lower temperatures. Despite their cooler nature, sunspots are often associated with increased solar activity, including solar flares and CMEs. The number and frequency of sunspots are not constant. They fluctuate over an approximately 11-year cycle known as the solar cycle. During periods of solar maximum, the sun exhibits a higher number of sunspots, along with increased solar activity. Conversely, during solar minimum, sunspot numbers decline, and solar activity is relatively subdued. The Carrington event occurred during a period of high solar activity, which is crucial to understanding the intensity of the storm. Solar flares and coronal mass ejection. Solar flares are sudden and intense bursts of electromagnetic radiation that occur when magnetic energy stored in the sun's atmosphere is suddenly released. These flares are often accompanied by CMEs, which are massive clouds of charged particles and magnetic fields ejected from the sun's corona. While solar flares primarily emit X-rays and ultraviolet radiation, CMEs are more directly responsible for geomagnetic storms on Earth. When a CME reaches Earth, it interacts with our planet's magnetic field, potentially causing severe disturbances known as geomagnetic storms. These storms can induce electric currents in the Earth's surface and atmosphere, which can disrupt power grids, communication systems, and even cause damage to satellites and other space-based infrastructure. Geomagnetic storms and their effects on Earth. A geomagnetic storm occurs when the Earth's magnetosphere, the region of space dominated by Earth's magnetic field, is disturbed by solar wind and CMEs. The strength and duration of a geomagnetic storm depend on the intensity of the solar wind and the alignment of the magnetic fields. The effects of geomagnetic storms can be wide-ranging. At high latitudes, the interaction between the solar wind and Earth's magnetic field can generate stunning auroras, commonly known as the northern and southern lights. However, the same processes can also induce electric currents in the ground, leading to disruptions in power grids and communication systems. The Carrington event was particularly notable for its widespread impacts on telegraph systems, which were the most advanced form of communication technology at the time. Early observations of solar activity. Before the advent of modern scientific instruments, human understanding of solar activity was limited. However, early astronomers and observers made significant contributions to the study of the sun and its behavior, laying the groundwork for the discoveries that would follow in the 19th century. Ancient and medieval observations. Grids of unusual solar phenomena, such as sunspots and auroras, date back thousands of years. Ancient Chinese astronomers, for instance, documented sunspots as early as the 4th century BC, describing them as dark spots that occasionally appeared on the sun's surface. Similarly, auroras have been recorded in various cultures, often interpreted as omens or supernatural events. During the medieval period, European and Islamic scholars continued to observe and document solar activity. However, the lack of consistent and accurate instrumentation meant that these observations were often sporadic and lacked the precision needed for scientific analysis. Nonetheless, these early records provided valuable data that would later be used to understand solar cycles and their effects on Earth. The Renaissance and the birth of solar astronomy. The Renaissance marked a turning point in the study of solar phenomena, thanks to the development of the telescope. In 1610, Galileo Galilei made one of the first recorded observations of sunspots using a telescope, challenging the prevailing belief in the sun's perfection. His observations revealed that the sun was an active and dynamic body, subject to changes over time. Around the same period, Johannes Kepler and other astronomers began to study the motion of the planets and their relationship to the sun, further enhancing our understanding of the solar system. These early telescopic observations laid the foundation for the systematic study of solar activity, setting the stage for future discoveries. The 18th and 19th centuries, toward a modern understanding. By the 18th century, solar observations had become more systematic, with astronomers like William Herschel and Heinrich Schwab making significant contributions to the study of solar cycles. Schwab, in particular, is credited with discovering the approximately 11-year cycle of sunspot activity, a finding that was crucial for understanding the periodic nature of solar storms. The 19th century saw further advancements, as scientists began to recognize the connection between solar activity and geomagnetic disturbances on Earth. Instruments like the magnetometer allowed for more precise measurements of geomagnetic activity, leading to a better understanding of how solar phenomena could affect Earth's magnetic field. The build-up to 1859. As the 19th century progressed, the scientific community became increasingly aware of the sun's influence on Earth's magnetic environment. The stage was set for one of the most significant solar events in recorded history, the Carrington event of 1859. Solar activity in the years leading up to the Carrington event. The years preceding the Carrington event were marked by high levels of solar activity. Astronomers had observed an increase in the number and intensity of sunspots, indicating that the sun was nearing a solar maximum. This period of heightened activity was a precursor to the powerful solar flare and CME that would eventually trigger the Carrington event. In the mid-19th century, telegraphy was rapidly expanding, connecting distant parts of the world through a network of wires. This technology was highly susceptible to geomagnetic disturbances, making it a perfect target for the effects of a major solar storm. As solar activity continued to rise, the potential for a significant geomagnetic event grew ever more likely. Technological and scientific context of the mid-19th century. Mid-19th century was a time of rapid technological advancement and scientific discovery. The Industrial Revolution had transformed society, leading to the widespread adoption of new technologies, including the telegraph. This period also saw significant progress in the fields of physics and astronomy, as scientists sought to understand the fundamental forces that govern the natural world. In this context, the Carrington event was both a scientific curiosity and a practical challenge. On the one hand, it provided a unique opportunity to study the sun's influence on Earth. On the other hand, it exposed the vulnerabilities of emerging technologies to solar phenomena. The event would go on to shape scientific research and technological development for decades to come. Chapter 2: The Carrington Event. The solar flare and coronal mass ejection. On the morning of September 1, 1859, British astronomer Richard Carrington was conducting routine observations of the sun when he witnessed something extraordinary. At approximately 11:18 a.m., Carrington observed a sudden flash of intense white light emanating from a group of sunspots, an event that would later be identified as the first recorded solar flare. This solar flare was unprecedented in both its brightness and its intensity, marking the beginning of what would become known as the Carrington event. Observations by Richard Carrington and Richard Hodgson. Carrington was not alone in observing this remarkable solar flare. Around the same time, another English astronomer, Richard Hodgson, also independently recorded the event. Both astronomers described the flare as a bright, white light that appeared suddenly and lasted for several minutes. Carrington's observation was particularly significant because it provided a direct link between solar activity and geomagnetic disturbances on Earth, a connection that was not fully understood at the time. The subsequent coronal mass ejection solar flare observed by Carrington and Hodgson was accompanied by a massive coronal mass ejection CME, a powerful burst of solar wind and magnetic fields expelled from the sun's corona. This CME traveled at an extraordinary speed, reaching Earth in just 17.6 hours, a journey that typically takes several days. The CME's rapid arrival and immense energy were key factors in the severity of the geomagnetic storm that followed. The impact on Earth. Carrington event's effects on Earth were immediate and far-reaching. The geomagnetic storm that ensued is the most powerful on record, causing widespread disruption to telegraph systems, creating spectacular auroras, and leaving an indelible mark on both scientific and public consciousness. Telegraph systems. Telegraph systems, the most advanced communication technology of the time, were particularly vulnerable to the effects of the Carrington event. As the CME's charged particles interacted with Earth's magnetic field, they induced powerful electric currents in telegraph wires, causing widespread malfunctions across Europe and North America. Telegraph operators reported numerous strange and alarming phenomena. Sparks flew from telegraph machines, some operators received electric shocks, and in some cases, telegraph systems continued to transmit messages even after their power supplies were disconnected. The induced currents were so strong that they allowed telegraph messages to be sent over great distances without the need for batteries, a phenomenon that baffled and alarmed the operators. auroras across the globe. Being of the most visually stunning effects of the Carrington event was the appearance of auroras, which were visible far beyond their usual polar regions. These auroras were reported as far south as the Caribbean, Mexico, and Hawaii, with accounts describing the night sky as being illuminated with bright, colorful lights that rivaled the brightness of the full moon. In some places, the auroras were so intense that people mistook them for the glow of large fires. The vivid red, green, and purple lights filled the skies, inspiring awe and wonder among those who witnessed them. However, these displays also served as a stark reminder of the immense power of the sun and its ability to affect Earth's environment. Scientific observations and responses. The Carrington event prompted a flurry of scientific activity as researchers sought to understand the cause and implications of the geomagnetic storm. Scientists of the time recognized that the event was linked to the sun, but the precise mechanisms by which solar activity influenced Earth's magnetic field were not yet fully understood. In the wake of the Carrington event, scientists began to pay closer attention to the relationship between solar phenomena and geomagnetic disturbances. The event catalyzed the development of new instruments and methods for monitoring solar activity and its effects on Earth, laying the groundwork for the field of space weather research. The aftermath and long-term consequences. The immediate effects of the Carrington event were profound, but its long-term consequences were equally significant. The event led to a greater understanding of the Sun-Earth connection and spurred advancements in both science and technology. Impact on scientific research. The Carrington event marked a turning point in the study of solar-terrestrial interactions. In the years following the event, scientists began to systematically study sunspots, solar flares, and geomagnetic storms, leading to the development of the first space weather models. The event also highlighted the importance of continuous solar observation, which eventually led to the establishment of solar observatories and the development of more sophisticated monitoring equipment. Influence on technological development. The Carrington event exposed the vulnerabilities of emerging technologies to solar activity, prompting efforts to improve the resilience of communication and electrical systems. Although telegraph systems remained susceptible to geomagnetic disturbances in the years that followed, the event raised awareness of the need for protective measures, such as grounding and shielding of telegraph lines. As technology advanced, the lessons learned from the Carrington event informed the design and operation of more complex systems, including electrical grids, satellites, and space-based infrastructure. The event underscored the importance of preparing for the potential impacts of future solar storms, a lesson that remains relevant in the modern era. Public and cultural impact. The Carrington event left a lasting impression on the public, inspiring both fear and fascination with the power of the sun. Newspaper reports and personal accounts from the time reflect the awe and wonder experienced by those who witnessed the auroras and the disruptions caused by the geomagnetic storm. The event became part of the cultural memory, contributing to the mystique surrounding solar phenomena and their effects on Earth. In the years that followed, the Carrington event was referenced in scientific literature, popular media, and even in works of fiction. Its legacy continues to influence our understanding of solar activity and its potential to impact modern society. Chapter 3. Technological impact. Telegraph systems. In the 19th century by the mid-19th century, the telegraph had become a vital communication tool, revolutionizing the way information was transmitted over long distances. Invented by Samuel Morse in the 1830s, in 1840 seconds, the telegraph system used electrical signals to transmit coded messages through wires, allowing for near-instantaneous communication between distant locations. This technology quickly spread across Europe and North America, forming a vast network that connected cities, countries, and even continents. The expansion of telegraph networks. Rapid expansion of telegraph networks in the 19th century transformed global communication. By the 1850s, telegraph lines crisscrossed Europe and North America, linking major cities and facilitating international communication. The laying of the first transatlantic cable in 1858, although short-lived, symbolized the potential of telegraphy to bridge vast distances and bring the world closer together. Telegraph systems played a crucial role in various sectors, including commerce, government, and journalism. They enabled businesses to coordinate operations across multiple locations, allowed governments to transmit orders and receive reports in real time, and revolutionized the news industry by enabling the rapid dissemination of information. The telegraph became a cornerstone of the 19th century communication infrastructure, making its susceptibility to solar activity all the more significant. Vulnerabilities to geomagnetic storms. Despite their technological sophistication, telegraph systems were inherently vulnerable to geomagnetic storms. The wires that carried telegraph signals also acted as conductors for geomagnetically induced currents (GICS) during solar storms. These GICS could overload telegraph circuits, causing malfunctions and even damage to equipment. Telegraph systems were particularly vulnerable during periods of heightened solar activity, such as solar maxima, when the sun was more likely to produce powerful flares and CMEs. The Carrington event, occurring during a solar maximum, exposed the extent of this vulnerability, as telegraph systems across Europe and North America were severely affected by the geomagnetic storm. The Carrington event's impact on telegraph systems. The Carrington event's impact on telegraph systems was unprecedented, as the CME associated with the event struck Earth's magnetosphere. The resulting geomagnetic storm induced powerful currents in telegraph wires, leading to widespread disruptions and failures. Widespread telegraph failure. As the geomagnetic storm caused by the Carrington event led to telegraph failures across large parts of Europe and North America. Telegraph operators reported a variety of issues, including sudden power surges, sparks flying from telegraph machines, and messages being sent without the need for batteries. In some cases, the induced currents were so strong that they caused telegraph systems to catch fire, posing a significant danger to operators and equipment. The disruptions were not limited to isolated incidents. Telegraph networks across entire regions were affected. In the United States, telegraph lines along the East Coast and in the Midwest experienced severe outages, disrupting communication between major cities. In Europe, similar disruptions were reported, with telegraph operators struggling to maintain communication amid the storm's effects. Operator accounts and anecdotes. First-hand accounts from telegraph operators during the Carrington event provide valuable insights into the scale and severity of the disruptions. Many operators described the experience as both astonishing and frightening. Some reported receiving electric shocks from their equipment, while others noted that their telegraph machines continued to operate even after being disconnected from their power sources. One famous anecdote from the event involves telegraph operators in Boston and Portland who discovered that they could send and receive messages using only the induced currents from the geomagnetic storm, without any external power. This phenomenon, while remarkable, also highlighted the dangers posed by such powerful geomagnetic disturbances. These operator accounts illustrate the disruptive potential of geomagnetic storms and underscore the challenges faced by 19th-century telegraph systems during periods of intense solar activity. Long-term technological lessons. The Carrington event was a wake-up call for the scientific and technological communities, revealing the vulnerabilities of telegraph systems and, by extension, other electrical technologies to solar activity. The event prompted a re-evaluation of the design and operation of telegraph systems, leading to improvements in their resilience and reliability. Changes in telegraph system design. In the aftermath of the Carrington event, engineers and scientists began to implement changes in telegraph system designed to reduce the impact of geomagnetic storms. One of the most important measures was the grounding of telegraph lines, which helped to dissipate the induced currents and prevent them from damaging equipment. Additionally, telegraph operators were trained to recognize the signs of geomagnetic disturbances and take appropriate action to protect their equipment. These changes, while not foolproof, help to mitigate the effects of future geomagnetic storms on telegraph systems. The influence on later electrical and communication technology. Lessons learned from the Carrington event extended beyond telegraphy, influencing the development of later electrical and communication technologies. As the 19th century progressed, new inventions such as the telephone and electric power grids became integral to society, and their designers took into account the potential impacts of solar activity. The Carrington event underscored the importance of considering space weather in the design and operation of electrical systems, a lesson that remains relevant today, as modern technology becomes increasingly dependent on electricity and satellite-based communications. The legacy of the Carrington event in modern engineering. Legacy of the Carrington event continues to influence modern engineering practices. Today, engineers and scientists work to protect critical infrastructure, such as power grids and satellite systems, from the effects of geomagnetic storms. This includes the development of space weather forecasting systems, the implementation of protective measures in electrical grids, and the design of satellites that can withstand solar radiation. The Carrington event serves as a reminder of the sun's ability to affect Earth's technology and the importance of preparedness in mitigating the risks posed by space weather. By studying this historic event, modern engineers and scientists are better equipped to protect our increasingly complex and interconnected technological systems from similar occurrences in the future. Chapter 4: The Scientific Community's Response. Immediate reactions. An early theorist, Carrington event's unprecedented nature led to a wide range of reactions from the scientific community. At the time, the connection between solar activity and geomagnetic disturbances was not well understood, and the event sparked significant interest and debate among scientists. Initial observations and documentation. The first step in the scientific response to the Carrington event was the careful documentation of its effects. Astronomers, telegraph operators, and other observers recorded their experiences and observations, providing a wealth of data that would later be used to analyze the event. Richard Carrington's own observations of the solar flare were particularly significant. Carrington meticulously documented the flare he observed on September 1, 1859, noting the time, location on the sun's surface, and the duration of the event. His detailed records provided the first direct evidence linking solar activity to geomagnetic disturbances on Earth, although this connection would take time to be fully understood. In addition to Carrington's work, scientists and amateur astronomers across the globe reported unusual auroral displays and disruptions to telegraph systems. These observations were compiled and shared within the scientific community, laying the groundwork for a more comprehensive understanding of the event. Early theories on the cause of the disturbances in the immediate aftermath of the Carrington event. Various theories were proposed to explain the observed disturbances. Some scientists speculated that the event was related to volcanic activity or atmospheric phenomena, while others hypothesized a connection to solar activity. One of the earliest and most significant hypotheses came from Carrington himself. Based on the timing of the solar flare and the subsequent geomagnetic disturbances, Carrington suggested that the two phenomena might be connected. His theory was groundbreaking, as it challenged the prevailing belief that the sun's influence on Earth was limited to light and heat. However, Carrington's hypothesis was met with skepticism, as the mechanisms by which solar activity could influence Earth's magnetic field were not yet understood. As more data became available, other scientists began to explore the possibility of a link between solar flares and geomagnetic storms. This line of inquiry would eventually lead to a more complete understanding of the Sun-Earth connection, but it would take several decades of research to fully elucidate the relationship. The evolution of solar terrestrial science. The Carrington event served as a catalyst for the development of solar terrestrial science, a field of study focused on understanding the interactions between the Sun and Earth. In the years following the event, researchers made significant strides in uncovering the mechanisms behind geomagnetic storms and solar activity. Advances in solar observation. One of the key developments in the wake of the Carrington event was the improvement of solar observation techniques. Recognizing the importance of monitoring the sun, scientists began to develop more sophisticated instruments for observing solar phenomena, such as sunspots, flares, and CMEs. The invention of the spectroscope in the mid-19th century allowed astronomers to study the sun's spectrum in greater detail, leading to discoveries about the sun's composition and the nature of solar flares. Additionally, the establishment of dedicated solar observatories provided continuous monitoring of solar activity, enabling scientists to correlate solar events with geomagnetic disturbances on Earth. As solar observation became more systematic, scientists gained a better understanding of the solar cycle and its influence on geomagnetic activity. This knowledge laid the foundation for the modern field of space weather forecasting, which seeks to predict the effects of solar activity on Earth. The development of geomagnetic theory. In parallel with advances in solar observation, scientists also made progress in developing theories to explain geomagnetic storms. Building on the work of earlier researchers, such as Carl Friedrich Gauss, who had studied Earth's magnetic field, scientists began to explore the relationship between solar activity and geomagnetic disturbances. One of the most important breakthroughs came in the late 19th century when Swedish physicist von Arrhenius proposed that charged particles from the Sun, later known as the solar wind, could interact with Earth's magnetic field to produce geomagnetic storms. This idea provided a plausible mechanism for the connection between solar flares and geomagnetic disturbances, supporting Carrington's earlier hypothesis. The development of geomagnetic theory was further advanced by the work of British physicist Sidney Chapman, who in the early 20th century developed mathematical models to describe the interactions between the solar wind and Earth's magnetosphere. Chapman's work laid the groundwork for modern space weather research, which continues to build on the insights gained from studying the Carrington event. The recognition of space weather as a scientific field. The study of the Carrington event and subsequent solar storms led to the recognition of space weather as a distinct field of scientific inquiry. Space weather research focuses on understanding the sun's influence on the space environment around Earth, including the effects of solar activity on the magnetosphere, ionosphere, and technological systems. As space weather research developed, scientists began to appreciate the importance of monitoring solar activity and predicting its potential impacts on Earth. This recognition has led to the establishment of space weather monitoring programs and the development of forecasting tools that aim to mitigate the risks associated with geomagnetic storms and other space weather events. The legacy of the Carrington event in modern science. The Carrington event has left a lasting legacy in the field of solar terrestrial science. Its impact on the scientific community can be seen in the ongoing efforts to understand and predict the effects of solar activity on Earth, as well as in the continued study of historical solar storms. Influence on modern solar and space weather research. The Carrington event remains a key reference point in modern solar and space weather research. Scientists continue to study the event to gain insights into the behavior of the sun and its potential impacts on Earth. By analyzing historical data and comparing it with modern observations, researchers can better understand the dynamics of solar storms and improve space weather forecasting. The event also serves as a benchmark for assessing the potential impacts of future solar storms. By studying the effects of the Carrington event on 19th century technology, scientists can estimate the potential risks to modern infrastructure, such as power grids, satellites, and communication systems, from similar or even more powerful solar storms. The role of the Carrington event in public awareness. In addition to its scientific significance, the Carrington event has played a role in raising public awareness of space weather. The event is often cited in discussions about the potential risks posed by solar storms to modern society, highlighting the importance of preparedness and mitigation efforts. As awareness of space weather has grown, governments and organizations have taken steps to protect critical infrastructure from the effects of solar storms. The Carrington event serves as a reminder of the sun's power and the need for continued research and vigilance in the face of potential space weather hazards. The Carrington event as a cautionary tale. The Carrington event stands as a cautionary tale about the potential dangers of solar activity. While the event occurred more than 160 years ago, its lessons remain relevant today. The event underscores the importance of understanding the sun's influence on Earth and the need to protect modern technology from the effects of space weather. As our reliance on technology continues to grow, the potential impact of a solar storm similar to the Carrington event becomes increasingly concerning. By studying this historic event, scientists, engineers, and policymakers can work together to develop strategies for mitigating the risks and ensuring the resilience of critical systems in the face of future solar storms. Chapter 5: The Carrington Event. Societal Impact. Immediate effects on society. The Carrington event, as the most powerful geomagnetic storm on record, had immediate and noticeable effects on society in 1859. Despite the relative technological simplicity of the time compared to today, the event's impact was still significant, demonstrating the far-reaching consequences of space weather on human activities. Public reactions to the horizon. Of the most striking immediate effects of the Carrington event was the extraordinary auroral displays seen around the world. Normally confined to polar regions, auroras were visible as far south as the Caribbean, Hawaii, and Rome. These vivid lights in the sky, predominantly red, green, and purple, were reported by newspapers and witnessed by people across the globe. For many, the auroras were a source of awe and wonder. Accounts from the time describe how people stayed up through the night to watch the sky, fascinated by the unusual and brilliant displays. However, not everyone reacted with such amazement. Some interpreted the auroras as ominous signs, foreshadowing disaster or divine intervention. In many areas, people who had never seen an aurora before were deeply affected by the sight. While the auroras captivated the public, the Carrington event also caused more tangible disruptions to daily life and commerce. The telegraph system, the most advanced communication technology of the time, was particularly hard hit. Telegraph lines across Europe and North America experienced failures, with some lines sparking or catching fire due to the induced currents from the geomagnetic storm. These disruptions had immediate economic consequences. Businesses that relied on telegraph communication to coordinate activities, such as shipping companies and financial institutions, faced delays and confusion. In some cases, the inability to send and receive messages led to financial losses, as transactions and decisions were postponed. Moreover, the event highlighted society's growing dependence on technology and the vulnerability of such systems to natural phenomena. Although the telegraph was relatively new, it had quickly become an essential part of modern life, and the Carrington event underscored the potential risks associated with relying on technology that could be affected by space weather. Long-term societal impact. Beyond the immediate disruptions, the Carrington event had lasting effects on society. It influenced public perceptions of science and technology, contributed to the development of scientific inquiry into solar-terrestrial interactions, and laid the groundwork for future discussions on the relationship between technology and nature. Public awareness of solar-terrestrial connections. The Carrington event marked one of the first times that the general public became aware of the sun's influence on Earth in a way that went beyond light and warmth. The event helped to foster a greater appreciation for the complexity of natural phenomena and the interconnectedness of the Earth and its environment. As newspapers reported on the event and scientists began to explore its causes, people started to understand that the sun could have direct and powerful effects on their lives. This awareness, though initially limited, laid the foundation for a broader public interest in space, weather, and solar science, which would grow significantly in the 20th and 21st centuries. Influence on scientific and educational discourse. The Carrington event also influenced the scientific and educational discourse of the time, as scientists like Richard Carrington and Balfour Stewart presented their findings on the relationship between solar flares and geomagnetic storms. These ideas began to permeate the scientific community and eventually found their way into educational materials. The event prompted a reevaluation of the role of the sun in Earth's natural processes and encouraged further research into solar-terrestrial interactions. In the decades following the event, these areas of study gained prominence, leading to the establishment of new scientific disciplines and institutions focused on understanding space weather and its effects on Earth. Educational institutions began to incorporate these findings into their curricula, teaching students about the sun's influence on the Earth and the potential for solar activity to disrupt technological systems. This helped to raise awareness among future generations of scientists and engineers about the importance of monitoring and understanding space weather. Economic and industrial implications. The economic implications of the Carrington event extended beyond the immediate disruptions to telegraph systems. The event served as a wake-up call to industries that relied on technology, highlighting the need for resilience in the face of natural phenomena. In the long term, the event spurred innovations in the design and operation of telegraph systems, as well as other technologies that were susceptible to geomagnetic disturbances. Engineers and scientists began to explore ways to protect these systems from the effects of solar storms, leading to improvements in grounding techniques and the development of more robust equipment. The Carrington event also had implications for the insurance industry, as companies that covered telegraph operations and other affected businesses were forced to reconsider the risks posed by space weather. This contributed to a broader understanding of the need to assess and mitigate risks associated with natural disasters, including those driven by space weather. The Carrington event and cultural memory. The Carrington event has become a part of cultural memory, serving as a historical example of the sun's power and its potential to disrupt human activities. Over time, the event has been referenced in literature, media, and public discourse, often as a metaphor for the unpredictable and sometimes catastrophic forces of nature. Historical accounts and popular culture. Historical accounts of the Carrington event have been preserved in various forms, from scientific journals and newspapers to personal diaries and letters. These records provide a glimpse into how people of the time experienced and interpreted the event, offering valuable insights into 19th century society and its relationship with nature. In popular culture, the Carrington event has been referenced in works of fiction, documentaries, and educational programs. It is often portrayed as a dramatic and awe-inspiring event, with a focus on the vivid auroras and the telegraph disruptions that it caused. These portrayals contribute to the event's status as a symbol of the potential dangers posed by space weather. The event's role in modern discussions on space weather preparedness. In modern times, the Carrington event is frequently cited in discussions about space weather preparedness, as scientists and policymakers consider the potential impacts of future solar storms. The event serves as a benchmark for understanding the worst-case scenarios. The event's legacy is evident in the development of space weather monitoring systems, forecasting tools, and mitigation strategies. Governments and organizations around the world have recognized the importance of preparing for solar storms, and the Carrington event is often used as a case study to illustrate the potential risks. The event's role in these discussions underscores the need for continued research and investment in space weather preparedness. By studying the Carrington event and its societal impact, modern society can better understand the challenges posed by space weather and take steps to protect critical infrastructure and technological systems. Chapter 6: The Technological Impact of the Carrington Event. The effect on 19th-century telegraph systems. The Carrington event's most notable immediate technological impact was on the telegraph systems of the mid-19th century, which were the backbone of long-distance communication at the time. The disruptions caused by the event provided early, stark evidence of how vulnerable technological systems could be to solar-induced geomagnetic disturbances. Telegraph networks and infrastructure. By 1859, telegraphy was a critical part of both European and North American communication networks, linking cities, countries, and even continents via undersea cables. These systems were primarily composed of overhead lines, which were particularly susceptible to the electromagnetic effects of geomagnetic storms. When the Carrington event's massive coronal mass ejection (CME) reached Earth, it induced electric currents in telegraph wires, leading to widespread malfunctions. In some cases, telegraph operators found that they could still send and receive messages even after disconnecting their power supplies, as the induced currents were sufficient to operate the equipment. This phenomenon, while initially surprising, soon became alarming as equipment overheated, sparked, and in some instances, caught fire. Communication disruptions and economic consequences. The most immediate technological impact of the Carrington event was the disruption of communication networks. Telegraph systems across the world experienced outages, with some systems completely incapacitated for hours or even days. Messages were delayed, and critical communications, particularly those related to commerce and trade, were halted. The economic consequences of these disruptions were significant. Financial markets, which relied heavily on the telegraph for timely information about stocks, commodities, and other economic indicators, were particularly affected. The inability to communicate rapidly led to confusion and uncertainty in the markets, exacerbating the financial risks associated with trading. The disruptions also had a cascading effect on other sectors of the economy. Shipping companies, which used telegraphs to coordinate the movement of goods, experienced delays that affected supply chains. In some cases, the inability to confirm orders or deliveries led to financial losses, highlighting the broader economic impact of the event. Lessons learned in technological adaptations. The Carrington event served as a wake-up call for the nascent telecommunications industry. Engineers and operators quickly realized that geomagnetic storms posed a significant risk to telegraph systems, prompting efforts to mitigate these risks in the future. One of the key lessons learned from the event was the importance of grounding telegraph lines. In the years following the Carrington event, telegraph companies began to implement more robust grounding practices, which helped to protect equipment from the induced currents generated by geomagnetic storms. Additionally, the event spurred interest in understanding the relationship between solar activity and telegraph disruptions. Scientists and engineers began to study the effects of solar flares and geomagnetic storms on communication systems, leading to the development of early space weather monitoring techniques. These efforts laid the groundwork for modern space weather forecasting and the ongoing effort to protect technological systems from solar activity. Long-term implications for technological development. The Carrington event not only had immediate effects on the technology of the time, but also influenced the development of new technologies and the evolution of existing systems. The event highlighted the need for resilience in technological systems and spurred innovations that would shape the future of communication and infrastructure. The evolution of communication technology. As the vulnerabilities exposed by the Carrington event had a profound impact on the evolution of communication technologies. As the telegraph gave way to more advanced systems, such as the telephone and radio, engineers incorporated lessons from the Carrington event into their designs. For example, the development of telephone networks in the late 19th and early 20th centuries included considerations for grounding and shielding against electromagnetic interference. Similarly, the advent of radio technology brought new challenges related to solar activity, leading to further advancements in understanding and mitigating the effects of geomagnetic storms. As communication technologies continued to evolve, the legacy of the Carrington event persisted. The event served as a reminder of the need to design systems that could withstand the unpredictable forces of nature, and it influenced the development of technologies that were more resilient to space weather. The impact on power generation and distribution. While the Carrington event primarily affected telegraph systems, it also had implications for the development of power generation and distribution technologies. The event demonstrated the potential for geomagnetic storms to induce currents in long conductors, a phenomenon that would become increasingly relevant as the use of electrical power expanded. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, as electrical power became more widespread, engineers and scientists began to recognize the risks posed by geomagnetically induced currents (GICS) to power grids and other infrastructure. The Carrington event provided an early example of these risks, highlighting the need for protective measures to safeguard electrical systems. This recognition influenced the design and operation of power grids, particularly in regions with high levels of geomagnetic activity. Engineers developed techniques to mitigate the effects of GICS, such as installing capacitors and other protective devices in power lines. These efforts helped to reduce the risk of damage to transformers and other critical components, ensuring the reliability of power systems in the face of space weather events. The birth of space weather research. The technological impact of the Carrington event also played a role in the birth of space weather research. The event highlighted the need for a better understanding of the sun's influence on Earth's technological systems, leading to the establishment of the field of space weather science. Space weather research has since become a critical component of efforts to protect technological systems from the effects of solar activity. Scientists now monitor the sun's activity in real time, using satellites and ground-based observatories to track solar flares, CMEs, and other phenomena that can affect Earth's magnetic field. This research has led to the development of sophisticated models and forecasting tools that allow scientists to predict the impact of solar storms on technological systems. These tools are now used by governments, power companies, and communication providers to prepare for and mitigate the effects of space weather, ensuring the resilience of critical infrastructure. The Carrington event's influence on modern technology and infrastructure. The lessons learned from the Carrington event continue to influence the design and operation of modern technology and infrastructure. As society becomes increasingly reliant on complex technological systems, the need to protect these systems from space weather has become more pressing. Modern power grids and space weather vulnerabilities. When power grids are significantly more complex and widespread than the telegraph systems of the 19th century, and they are also more vulnerable to the effects of space weather. The Carrington event serves as a reminder of the potential risks posed by geomagnetic storms, particularly in regions with high-latitude power grids. The impact of GICS on power grids is now a major concern for utility companies and governments. A severe geomagnetic storm, similar to the Carrington event, could induce currents in power lines that are strong enough to damage transformers and other critical components, potentially leading to widespread blackouts. To address this risk, power companies have implemented a range of protective measures, including the installation of jick-resistant transformers, the use of real-time monitoring systems, and the development of protocols for reducing grid load during geomagnetic storms. These efforts are designed to minimize the impact of space weather on power infrastructure, ensuring the reliability of electricity supply even during severe solar storms. Satellite technology and space weather. The rise of satellite technology has introduced new challenges related to space weather. Satellites orbiting the Earth are directly exposed to the effects of solar activity, including increased radiation levels and the potential for damage to onboard electronics. The Carrington event has become a reference point for understanding the potential impact of solar storms on satellites. Engineers now design satellites with protective shielding and redundant systems to reduce the risk of damage from space weather. In addition, space agencies and satellite operators use space weather forecasts to adjust satellite operations during periods of high solar activity, such as altering orbits or temporarily shutting down non-essential systems. The role of space weather in future technological development as society becomes more dependent on technology. The importance of space weather research and preparedness continues to grow. The Carrington event serves as a historical example of the potential impact of solar storms on technological systems, and it informs ongoing efforts to develop resilient infrastructure. Looking to the future, space weather is likely to play a critical role in the development of new technologies, particularly as humanity expands its presence in space. The exploration of other planets, the establishment of space-based industries, and the development of new communication and navigation systems will all require careful consideration of space weather risks. By studying the Carrington event and its impact on 19th-century technology, scientists and engineers can better understand the challenges posed by space weather and develop the tools and strategies needed to protect future technological systems. This ongoing effort will help to ensure that society remains resilient in the face of the unpredictable forces of the sun. Chapter 7: The Carrington Event in Historical Context. Comparative analysis with other historical solar storms. The Carrington Event, as the most powerful geomagnetic storm recorded, provides a benchmark for understanding solar storms throughout history. To appreciate its significance, it is helpful to compare it with other notable solar storms and geomagnetic events. Early historical records of solar activity. Historical records from ancient civilizations provide evidence of solar activity, although the connection between these events and geomagnetic disturbances was not well understood until the Carrington event. Ancient Chinese, Japanese, and Korean records occasionally mention unusual celestial phenomena, including bright auroras and changes in the color of the sun. In Western records, references to unusual celestial events can be found in medieval chronicles. For instance, the aurora borealis was occasionally noted in European documents, but these early records lack the scientific context needed to link such phenomena to solar activity. These historical observations offer a glimpse into how previous generations interpreted and recorded solar and geomagnetic events, but they do not provide detailed information comparable to the Carrington event. Notable solar storms before and after the Carrington event. The Carrington event is often compared with others. The 1770 solar storm. A significant geomagnetic storm occurred in 1770, which was observed in Europe and North America. This storm was notable for its intense auroral displays. Although it did not reach the scale of the Carrington event, the 1770 storm demonstrated the cyclical nature of solar activity and set the stage for future studies of solar-terrestrial interactions. The 1921 solar storm, often referred to as the Great Solar Storm of 1921, this event was notable for its impact on telegraph systems and its similarity to the Carrington event in terms of intensity. The 1921 storm caused widespread telegraph disruptions and provided further evidence of the relationship between solar activity and geomagnetic disturbances. The 1989 Quebec blackout. The 1989 geomagnetic storm, which led to a significant blackout in Quebec, highlighted the ongoing relevance of space weather in modern times. While not as intense as the Carrington event, the 1989 storm underscored the vulnerability of modern power grids to solar activity. These events, along with the Carrington event, illustrate the varying intensity and impact of solar storms throughout history. The comparison provides insight into the long-term patterns of solar activity and the evolution of our understanding of space weather. Impact on scientific understanding and technology. The Carrington event had a profound impact on scientific understanding and technological development. Its influence extended beyond the immediate disruptions to telegraph systems and shaped the course of scientific inquiry and technological advancement. Advancements in solar terrestrial science. The Carrington event marked a turning point in the study of solar terrestrial interactions. The event's documentation and analysis led to a deeper understanding of the connection between solar activity and geomagnetic disturbances. Key advancements include the development of solar physics. The Carrington event spurred the development of solar physics as a field of study. Scientists began to explore the sun's role in influencing Earth's space environment, leading to the establishment of solar observatories and the development of observational techniques. The understanding of geomagnetic storms. The event provided early evidence of the mechanisms behind geomagnetic storms. researchers began to investigate the relationship between solar flares, coronal mass ejection (CMEs), and geomagnetic activity, laying the groundwork for modern space weather research. Space weather forecasting. The lessons learned from the Carrington event contributed to the development of space weather forecasting. Scientists developed models to predict the impact of solar storms on Earth's magnetic field and technological systems, improving preparedness for future events. Technological adaptations and innovations. The Carrington event also influenced technological development. Engineers and scientists applied the lessons learned from the event to improve the resilience of technological systems. Notable innovations include telegraph system improvements. The telegraph industry made significant improvements in grounding and shielding practices to protect against geomagnetic disturbances. These enhancements helped to reduce the risk of equipment damage and communication disruptions. Advancements in electrical systems. The impact of the Carrington event on early electrical systems highlighted the need for protective measures against geomagnetic currents. Engineers developed technologies to mitigate the effects of geomagnetic storms on power grids and other infrastructure. Space weather monitoring and research. The event contributed to the establishment of space weather monitoring systems and research programs. Modern space weather research relies on satellite observations and ground-based instruments to track solar activity and predict its effects on Earth. The Carrington event's legacy in popular culture. The Carrington event's dramatic impact on society and technology has left a lasting legacy in popular culture. Its influence can be seen in literature, media, and public discourse. Representations in literature and media. The Carrington event has been featured in various forms of literature and media. Fictional portrayals often emphasize the dramatic and apocalyptic aspects of the event, highlighting the vivid auroras and the technological disruptions it caused. Historical novels and documentaries. The event has been the subject of historical novels and documentaries that explore its impact on society and technology. These works provide a narrative of the event and its significance, often incorporating historical records and scientific analysis. Science fiction and popular media. In science fiction, the Carrington event is sometimes used as a backdrop for stories about space weather and its potential consequences. Popular media often reference the event to illustrate the potential dangers of solar storms and the importance of space weather preparedness. Educational and public awareness efforts. The Carrington event has also played a role in educational and public awareness efforts. Its historical significance and impact on technology make it a valuable case study for understanding space weather and its effects. Educational programs and exhibits. Museums, educational institutions, and science centers often include the Carrington event in their exhibits and programs. These efforts aim to educate the public about the event's significance and the importance of monitoring space weather. Public awareness campaigns. Public awareness campaigns use the Carrington event to highlight the potential risks of solar storms and promote preparedness. By referencing this historic event, these campaigns aim to raise awareness of space weather and its impact on modern technology. Chapter 8: The Carrington Event and Modern Space Weather Preparedness. Advances in space weather forecasting. Since the Carrington event, significant advancements have been made in space weather forecasting, driven by the need to predict and mitigate the effects of solar storms on modern technology and infrastructure. These advancements are critical for preparing for and responding to geomagnetic disturbances. Development of space weather models. The understanding of space weather and its impact on Earth has greatly improved with the development of sophisticated space weather models. These models use data from solar observations, geomagnetic monitoring, and other sources to predict solar storms and their potential effects on Earth. Numerical models. Numerical models simulate the interactions between solar wind, the Earth's magnetic field, and the ionosphere. These models help scientists predict the intensity and duration of geomagnetic storms, providing valuable information for decision-making and preparedness. Real-time monitoring. Modern space weather forecasting relies on real-time monitoring of solar activity. Satellites, such as the Solar and Heliospheric Observatory (SOHO) and the Solar Dynamics Observatory (SDO), provide continuous data on solar flares, coronal mass ejections (CMEs), and solar wind conditions. This data is used to assess the potential impact of solar storms and issue warnings. Space weather prediction centers. Several organizations and agencies around the world are dedicated to monitoring space, weather, and providing forecasts and alerts. These prediction centers play a crucial role in preparing for and responding to space weather events. The Space Weather Prediction Center SWIFS, part of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration (NOAA) in the United States, the SWIFS provides space weather forecasts, alerts, and warnings. The center uses data from satellites and ground-based instruments to monitor solar activity and predict its impact on Earth. The European Space Agency ESA operates the Space Weather Coordination Center (SUC), which provides space weather services and coordinates research and monitoring efforts across Europe. The SUC works to improve space weather forecasting and support preparedness efforts. The Japan Meteorological Agency GMA provides space weather forecasts and alerts for Japan and the surrounding region. The agency monitors solar activity and its effects on the Earth's magnetic field, contributing to global space weather research and preparedness. Public awareness and education. Public awareness and education are essential components of space weather preparedness. Efforts to educate the public about space weather and its potential impacts help individuals and organizations make informed decisions and take appropriate precautions. Educational programs and outreach. Science centers, museums, and educational institutions offer programs and exhibits on space weather. These initiatives aim to increase public understanding of solar storms and their effects, promoting preparedness and resilience. Media and communication. Media campaigns and communication efforts use various platforms to inform the public about space weather events. News articles, documentaries, and social media updates provide timely information and raise awareness about the potential risks of solar storms. Infrastructure resilience and mitigation strategies. As the world becomes increasingly dependent on technology, ensuring the resilience of critical infrastructure against space weather is essential. Various strategies and measures have been developed to protect infrastructure and minimize the impact of geomagnetic disturbances. Protection of power grids. Power grids are particularly vulnerable to geomagnetic storms due to the long conductors used in transmission lines. Several strategies have been implemented to protect power grids from the effects of geomagnetic disturbances. Grid design and engineering. Modern power grid design incorporates measures to reduce the impact of geomagnetic-induced currents (GICS). This includes installing capacitor banks and other devices to mitigate GICS and protect transformers and other critical components. Monitoring and response. Utility companies and grid operators use real-time monitoring systems to detect geomagnetic activity and assess its impact on the power grid. During periods of heightened solar activity, operators may implement load reduction measures and other precautions to protect the grid. Research and collaboration. Ongoing research and collaboration between scientists, engineers, and policymakers contribute to the development of new technologies and strategies for grid protection. Efforts to improve grid resilience are informed by historical events, such as the Carrington event, and current research on space weather. Safeguarding communication systems. Communication systems, including satellite networks and terrestrial infrastructure, are vulnerable to the effects of solar storms. Measures to protect these systems are essential for maintaining reliable communication during geomagnetic disturbances. Satellite design and shielding. Satellites are designed with shielding to protect against increased radiation and other effects of solar storms. Redundant systems and onboard monitoring help to mitigate the impact of space weather on satellite operations. Ground-based communication infrastructure. Ground-based communication systems, such as radio and telephone networks, are also vulnerable to space weather. Engineers implement protective measures, such as grounding and shielding, to reduce the impact of geomagnetic disturbances on these systems. Planning organizations that rely on communication systems develop contingency plans to address potential disruptions caused by space weather. These plans include procedures for maintaining communication during solar storms and recovering from any outages. Enhancing scientific research and collaboration. Scientific research and collaboration play a critical role in improving space weather forecasting and preparedness. Continued investment in research helps to advance our understanding of solar activity and its effects on Earth. International collaboration. Space weather research involves collaboration between scientists and organizations from around the world. International partnerships support data sharing, joint research projects, and the development of global space weather monitoring networks. Research funding and support. Governments and research institutions provide funding and support for space weather research. This includes investments in observational technology, modeling efforts, and the development of new forecasting tools. In space weather science, ongoing research focuses on understanding the mechanisms behind solar activity and geomagnetic disturbances. Advances in space weather science contribute to improved forecasting capabilities and better preparedness for space weather events. Future challenges and opportunities. As space weather continues to evolve, future challenges and opportunities will shape the field of space weather research and preparedness. Addressing these challenges will be essential for maintaining the resilience of technological systems and infrastructure. Anticipating extreme space weather events. While the Carrington event serves as a historical benchmark, future space weather events may surpass its intensity. Researchers and policymakers must prepare for the possibility of extreme space weather scenarios and develop strategies to address potential impacts. Scenario planning and risk assessment. Scenario planning and risk assessment help to identify potential vulnerabilities and develop strategies for managing extreme space weather events. This includes modeling worst-case scenarios and assessing their potential impact on infrastructure. Technological innovation. Advancements in technology will play a crucial role in addressing future challenges. Innovations in space weather monitoring, forecasting, and mitigation will help to improve preparedness and resilience. Improving global coordination and response. Global coordination and response efforts are essential for managing the impacts of space weather. Collaboration between countries, organizations, and industries will help to ensure a unified approach to space weather preparedness. International agreements and standards. Developing international agreements and standards for space weather monitoring and response will help to promote consistency and coordination. Global efforts to address space weather risks will enhance preparedness and resilience on a worldwide scale. Information sharing and collaboration. Sharing information and collaborating on space weather research and preparedness efforts will support a more comprehensive understanding of space weather and its impacts. International partnerships and networks play a key role in this process. Promoting public awareness and education. Increasing public awareness and education about space weather will help individuals and organizations make informed decisions and take appropriate precautions. Educational initiatives. Educational initiatives that focus on space weather and its effects will help to raise awareness and promote preparedness. Schools, universities, and community organizations can play a role in educating the public about space weather. Public engagement and communication. Engaging with the public through media campaigns, outreach programs, and informational resources will help to increase understanding of space weather and its potential impacts. Chapter 9. Lessons learned from the Carrington event and their application to modern space weather challenges. Key takeaways from the Carrington event. The Carrington event of 1859 was a landmark in the study of space weather, providing crucial insights that have shaped modern understanding and preparedness for solar storms. The event's impact on telegraph systems and its dramatic auroras offered early evidence of the potential effects of geomagnetic disturbances. Understanding solar-terrestrial interactions. The Carrington event underscored the connection between solar activity and geomagnetic disturbances. It demonstrated that solar flares and coronal mass ejections (CMEs) could induce significant geomagnetic storms on Earth, affecting technological systems and natural phenomena. Solar flares and CMEs. The event highlighted the importance of monitoring solar flares and CMEs, which are the primary drivers of geomagnetic storms. Understanding the relationship between these solar phenomena and Earth's magnetic field has been crucial for developing space weather forecasting and prediction models. Geomagnetic storms. The intensity of the Carrington event provided a benchmark for assessing geomagnetic storms. It showed how solar storms could impact Earth's magnetic field, leading to disturbances in communication systems, power grids, and other technologies. Technological vulnerabilities and resiliency. Disruptions experienced by telegraph systems during the Carrington event revealed vulnerabilities in early technologies. These observations provided valuable lessons for improving the resilience of technological systems to space weather. Telegraph systems. The Carrington event exposed the susceptibility of telegraph systems to geomagnetic disturbances. The experience led to improvements in grounding and shielding practices, which have influenced the design of modern communication systems. Infrastructure protection. The event's impact on technology highlighted the need for protective measures against geomagnetic storms. Advances in technology and engineering have since focused on enhancing the resilience of infrastructure, including power grids, communication systems, and satellites. Applying historical lessons to modern space weather challenges. The lessons learned from the Carrington event have been instrumental in addressing contemporary space weather challenges. By applying historical insights, scientists, engineers, and policymakers can better prepare for and mitigate the effects of solar storms. Advances in space weather monitoring and prediction. The Carrington event's historical significance has driven the development of advanced space weather monitoring and prediction systems. Modern technology allows for real-time observation and forecasting of solar activity, enhancing preparedness for geomagnetic disturbances. Satellite observations. Satellites such as SOHO, STO, and the Advanced Composition Explorer ACE provide continuous monitoring of solar activity. These observations help to detect solar flares, CMEs, and solar wind conditions, enabling timely predictions of space weather impacts. Forecasting models. Numerical models simulate solar-terrestrial interactions and predict the intensity of geomagnetic storms. These models incorporate data from solar observations and ground-based instruments to forecast space weather events and their potential effects. Improving technological resiliency. Lessons from the Carrington event has led to advancements in protecting technological systems from space weather. Engineers and scientists have developed strategies to enhance the resilience of infrastructure and reduce the impact of geomagnetic disturbances. Power grid protection. Modern power grids incorporate measures to mitigate the effects of geomagnetic-induced currents (GICS). Protective devices, such as capacitors and jick-resistant transformers, help to safeguard critical components and ensure grid stability during solar storms. Communication systems. Advances in satellite technology, grounding practices, and shielding have improved the resilience of communication systems. These measures help to protect satellites, ground-based networks, and other technologies from the effects of space weather. Enhancing public awareness and preparedness. The Carrington event's legacy includes efforts to raise public awareness and promote preparedness for space weather events. Educating the public about the potential risks of solar storms helps individuals and organizations take appropriate precautions. Educational programs. Schools, universities, and science centers offer programs and exhibits on space weather. These initiatives aim to increase understanding of solar storms and their effects, promoting preparedness and resilience. Public communication, media campaigns, and public awareness efforts provide information about space weather and its potential impacts. Timely updates and alerts help individuals and organizations respond effectively to solar storms. Future directions and ongoing research. As space weather research continues to evolve, ongoing studies and advancements will address emerging challenges and opportunities. The legacy of the Carrington event informs current research and supports efforts to enhance space weather forecasting and preparedness. Research on extreme space weather events. Studying extreme space weather events, such as the Carrington event, helps scientists anticipate and prepare for potential future scenarios. Research focuses on understanding the mechanisms behind severe solar storms and their impacts on modern technology. Historical event analysis. Analyzing historical solar storms provides insights into the characteristics and effects of extreme space weather. This research helps to identify potential vulnerabilities and improve forecasting capabilities. Simulation and modeling. Advanced simulations and modeling techniques are used to predict the effects of extreme space weather on infrastructure. These tools support scenario planning and risk assessment, informing preparedness efforts. International collaboration and coordination. Global collaboration is essential for addressing space weather challenges and improving preparedness. International partnerships support research, data sharing, and coordinated response efforts. Global space weather networks. International networks, such as the International Space Environment Service (ISAS), facilitate data sharing and collaboration on space weather research. These networks contribute to a more comprehensive understanding of space weather and its impacts. Cross-border preparedness, coordinated efforts between countries and organizations help to ensure a unified approach to space weather preparedness. Joint initiatives support the development of global standards and best practices for managing space weather risks. Promoting innovation and technological advancement. Innovation and technological advancement will play a crucial role in addressing future space weather challenges. Continued investment in research and development will enhance our ability to forecast, mitigate, and respond to solar storms. Emerging technologies. Advances in technology, such as new observational instruments and forecasting tools, will improve space weather monitoring and prediction. Ongoing research supports the development of innovative solutions to address space weather risks. Investment in space weather research. Supporting research on space weather and its impacts ensures that we are prepared for future challenges. Funding and resources contribute to the advancement of space weather science and the development of effective preparedness strategies.